The following discussion is for informational purposes only. The speaker's opinions belong to them and may differ from opinions of JPMorgan Securities LLC and its affiliates. Views presented in this webcast are those of the speakers. They are as of November 18th, 2021, and they may not materialize. This is not an investment research call and is not personal investment advice or a solicitation or recommendation. Investment products are not bank deposit products, which means they are not guaranteed by a bank, not FDIC insured, and have risks like the possibility of losing money on your investment.
Hi, I'm Barry Simmons, Managing Director for JPMorgan Wealth Management, and I am thrilled to be here with you all today. In my role, I actually lead over 1,400 advisors across 1,500 branches on the Eastern Seaboard, and I'm also a co-chair for our Black Executive Forum, which is an opportunity for all of our managing directors, both domestically and internationally, for our Black leaders to get together and be ambassadors to push firm initiatives to help our community. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Mike Hill, an Emmy Award-winning journalist and co-host of Start Your Day with Sharon and Mike on the Black News Channel. Mike, thanks for being here with us today.
Happy to be here with you, Barry. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Looking forward to our discussion today. But before we get started, I just want to frame our conversation today. We're going to discuss critical issues about Black men, how to amass wealth and build legacy, and position our families for future generations to come. As we begin this conversation, you have to acknowledge that the wealth gap has really started to widen across the country. According to 2020 Federal Reserve data, Black families possess 1/10 the wealth compared to white families. And if we don't do something now, these current trends are only going to continue. The median wealth for Black families is on track to fall to zero by 2053, according to Prosperity Now research. But on a more hopeful note, some of us are starting to break through and position our families to thrive, and for long-term financial planning, that's the core to this growth. In 2002, only 9% of Black households in the US were participating in the stock market, compared to 36% of white households. And that's according to the Social Security Administration. But in 2020, the Federal Reserve data shows that these numbers have increased and jumped to 33% and 61% for Black and white families, respectively. So while progress has been made, we know that there is still so much more for us to do. So that's what we're going to dive into today. And I'm super excited about this conversation. And before we get started, Mike, you've had an amazing career. There's no doubt about it. Some of your accomplishments: you're a news anchor on a nationally recognized television program. You've won an Emmy. You've hosted SportsCenter, NBA Tonight, other programs on ESPN. Tell us, when did you realize that you were going to be truly successful like you are today?
Barry, that's something I've been thinking about a lot over the last couple of years, to be quite honest with you. And my answer has been, I'm not successful yet, because my definition of success is attaining your full capability. I've had a lot of successes in life, and I'm still growing. And I've been fortunate enough and blessed enough to be able to thrive in a high pressured atmosphere on television, writing books, or even playing in plays and acting and whatnot. But I haven't attained my full success that I want to attain yet. I haven't reached my full capability. So I'm not quite successful yet, but I'm getting there, brother. I'm getting there.
Well, listen, we are super excited to have you here, and I will tell you, we're proud of you. What you're doing is truly inspiring, and I think many are going to learn a lot from today's conversation. Now, we know you as a TV personality, but from what my research shows me, you actually were a national security agent at one point with top secret government clearance. So how did you make that transition into television, into what you are doing today?
Yeah, if you read my book, Open Mic, I still don't know how I got that top secret clearance, to be honest with you, in my background. Growing up, and I might even hit on a couple of those facts growing up as a kid and the environment I grew up in and the type of household I grew up in, with not having a male role model. I think it's really important to talk about it when it comes to financial wealth and security and growth and your financial literacy. But I went into the military and they gave me a top secret clearance some kind of way. I thought I was going into radio communications analyst. I thought I was going to be a radio communications person because I wanted to get into broadcasting. I ended up being a radio communications analyst specialist, which had nothing to do with radio and television at the time. But it took me on a path through the military and the intelligence field. And I ended up working at NSA for 3 years where I had the top secret clearance. So yeah, there's a couple of things I might know about you, your family. A couple of things I might know about your background, your bank accounts, whatnot. But of course, I'm gonna keep that to myself, man. So, and it just, I've always had a passion for broadcasting, for sports in particular. I was too bad playing sports, so I said, you know, how can I actually get into sports and do it a different way? And being a sportscaster was the answer. So the day I got out of the military is the day I got my first job in broadcasting as a sportscaster. And that was about 26 years ago. So it's been great, bro.
Wow, that's fantastic. Really, again, great progression. So let's talk a little bit about wealth and getting into the meat of our topic. You know, along your career journey, you've been able to accumulate some significant financial resources. So when did you realize, and what point was it you realized is that you needed some professional help managing these finances and you weren't able to do it necessarily on your own? And this is a two-part question. The first is, what was most important in finding that help? What were you looking for in an advisor? And then how would you help or recommend other people of things to look for when they're in that search as well?
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing that you look for when you're looking for a financial advisor is trust. I have to be able to trust you. This is your livelihood. This is your money. You work hard for that money. This is the security and the future for your family and your friends and your family and for your loved ones and for yourself. And you want to accumulate that type of stuff. So you need to have somebody that you can actually trust, somebody that you feel like it's not going to judge you as well. And I think the question for me is, when you ask, when did I first realize that? Unfortunately for me, and I'll be honest about this, and I think this is part of the conversation we should be having, is that a lot of people aren't honest about their finances and they're embarrassed about their finances because we were never taught about financial literacy growing up. A lot of us, I wasn't. Even though people would say things to me, I didn't quite realize the importance of it until later on. Even though I've been working in this business, in this industry for a long time, for 26 years, and been fortunate enough over the last 20 so years to be making six figures a year, I still wasn't in a great financial situation until about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And that is because I did not know how to financially plan my future. And that's been a big issue that I had. So when I finally started talking to somebody, it was somebody I had to trust. And that person that I was trusting with my financial future was actually my brother, who insisted that I do something with my money. He led me to other people. So that's the first part of your question. Is the answer to your question is to find somebody that you trust.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And Mike, you said something that's important to me. These conversations about wealth and growth, they're not necessarily happening in the schools. And for many folks in the Black community, they're not happening in the dinner table conversations at home. So oftentimes we're the first, and these conversations allow for these conversations to actually happen for the first time. And we can't be intimidated by the conversation of money. I think too often people are intimidated by what they don't know, but that actually will set them back in their opportunity to actually grow. So what you said is so important, because we have to realize that even folks that have money still may not know all the ways to make that money work for them. And that realization is so powerful, but getting the help and asking the questions is how you're really going to be able to grow going forward.
But to your point, here's the thing. It's two things. It's trust and pride. I told you about the trust thing. I need to have somebody I can trust, somebody that's not going to judge me. But the pride part of it is, people look at you and you look at your life and you see somebody on television and you see them on social media, you see them out there, and they might be in a nice house that might not have a lot of furniture in it. They might be driving a nice car. They might be wearing a nice watch. They have all the things on the outside to make them appear that they're doing well financially, but they might not be doing as well as the outside world takes it. So the pride kicks in because you know you're not doing well and you're embarrassed to share your portfolio of what you have or don't have with somebody, especially a total stranger, because they're looking, you're thinking you're going to be judged. And that's the bottom line. And for me, that was a huge case for me because I was making a lot of money. I was in a high profile job, but because of, you know, maybe spending it in the wrong place, spending on things that didn't appreciate in value, buying those cars or buying jewelry or buying clothes and appearing to be somebody of means or whatnot, I was embarrassed to come and show somebody, hey, man, really, I got basically a couple of $1,000s in the bank. And yeah, I know I got a Mercedes over here, but I can barely put gas in it. And that pride will lead you down a road of ruins. So I think this is something that you guys touch on as financial advisors. And once I finally went and swallowed my pride and went to a financial advisor, once again, i.e. my brother who led me to somewhere else, it made me realize that I don't care if I got a dime in my pocket or if I got 10 figures in my pocket. I need to go and get the help I need to make the money that I have work for me for my future.
Absolutely. Yeah, without question. You know, the other thing that's interesting is just the involvement of the Black community in the stock market. As we talked about earlier, there is a significant divide in the wealth for Blacks versus whites. The stock market, let's just take that conversation for a second. It's been volatile. There's no doubt about it. However, over the course of the last year and a half, it's been very profitable for many, yet Blacks aren't participating in that success at the same rate nearly as whites are. And there is something, I think, in our cultural and upbringing around this focus on saving, but not as much so for investing. So talk to us about that sentiment of, you know, it's more than just saving. You really do need to focus on investing.
But once again, it's a mindset that so many people that I know in my community, and I'm not saying there's a lot of people, and I don't know how you grew up, Barry, but your father, your grandfather may have taught you about investing. Nobody taught me. I didn't know about this. You know what I heard? Oh, you better get you a savings account. You got some money? Oh, baby, you got $75. You better put that in the savings account. And the $75 a year later is $75.75. You know what I mean? But you think that you're doing something right because you're putting it in savings, or people put it in a safe. Some people put it under their mattress. You know, these are the things that you've been taught for so many years. Because when you hear about the stock market, once again, this is sometimes the ignorance that we have that we need to get past and over, and the mindset that we have, I should say, is that you hear about the stock market that it's not for Black people. Oh, it's too volatile. It's too risky. Don't do that. Don't put your money there. You're going to lose all your money and whatnot. But the same people that tell you that will go to Vegas or go to Atlantic City, will spend plenty of money on the lottery to take that risk, but they won't put it in the stock market. And if you find somebody who will help you out and will work with you and teach you that, hey, every stock that you invest in isn't high risk. It doesn't have to be high risk. You got Roth IRAs. You got things that are low risk investments that can help you and gain interest over a period of time. So yeah, I think once again, it's trust, and it's somebody that you can get over your embarrassment, but somebody that can teach you and mold you. And you got to be able to swallow that pride in order to be taught and to be molded.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a couple things that you said there. Think about those that are out there with the lottery ticket example, week over week, buying that lottery ticket, when all of that money, if you add that up and have put that in any type of investment with the compounding impacts of investments where that money really could be versus the hope strategy. And then you also mentioned this focus on just saving and having the cash. You know, people, oh, you have cash, you have it in your pocket or you have it in the house. But guess what? The price of that money, the cost of that money with inflation over time is devalued versus if you had invested and gained some of the interest that you had mentioned before. So there's just so much opportunity for us, but we have to have these conversations and let people know about it. So I want to get a little vulnerable here for a second. I'm very curious if you want to share with us what's been the biggest mistake you've made so far managing money that you'd want to share with the audience so we can learn from that as well.
Not investing it, not getting in the stock market, not putting it aside. And once again, not just a savings account, but being one of those people that once you had money, because I grew up in a community where I didn't have any money. I grew up poor. I'm not going to say I grew up in poverty, but I didn't have anything. I didn't have a lot of things. I didn't have the nice clothes. I didn't have a nice house. So once I was able to afford that, guess what you do? You go out there and you buy those clothes. You go out there and buy the cars that appreciate in value. You don't go and buy things that appreciate in value that you can sell later for more money, or put that money aside. So that was the biggest issue and the biggest problem that I had, or going out there and using credit cards, high interest credit cards. I remember the first time I applied for a Sears card and I got that card. I'm like, oh, I got money in my pocket. And you don't think about that 23% interest rate that you got to pay off eventually or whatever. You don't think about those types of things. So those were some of the big mistakes that I made, because I wanted to live this life. I wanted to show people that I had something. And the people who make the most money in life are the people that walk around in khaki pants, and they're so unassuming. They drive a car that's efficient, a car that, they might have a nice car here, but they might have a Kia on the side that they drive to work or whatever. Those are things that are nice. And when you swallow that, once again, that pride and that arrogance of trying to stand out in a crowd, you can really stand out among your peers by making a lot of money in that wealth. Billionaires in this country, outside of the entertainers, you really wouldn't know them if they walked down the street. Most people wouldn't know who Warren Buffett is. They just wouldn't. You might know who Jeff Bezos is because he's on television a lot because of Amazon or whatever. But most of the billionaires, the ones that are influenced, the ones that have the most access, the ones that make a difference, not only in this country, but in the world, you have no idea who they are. Clippers owner, for example, we're in Hawaii and I see him walking down the street on a sidewalk, and he had on some shorts that looked like he had just gotten out of the Dollar General store. He had on a tourist t-shirt, some flip-flops. His hair was barely combed or whatever, but this man was worth $40 billion walking down the street. Nobody said anything to him. Nobody stopped him on the street. Nobody thought about, he was just the most unassuming guy in the world, but worth billions. And the only reason I knew he was a billionaire is because he was the owner of the team at that time. Steve Ballmer, that's his name, by the way. To answer your question, man, the biggest mistake I ever made was just putting my money in the wrong place because I wanted to do the wrong things and impress the wrong people instead of impressing myself by looking myself in the mirror and looking at my bank account, looking at my portfolio and saying, wow, my future is set, and so is the future of my children.
Yeah, listen, I love that. At the end of the day, it is not what you can spend and buy. And to your point, the flossiness and the errors, it really should be about how you're creating that generational wealth and building your portfolio and making your money work for you. That's the one thing I think people don't realize is if you are focused on investing and diversification of those investments, your wealth can grow for you. Your money needs to grow for you versus in a low interest rate environment, not in being invested, you're actually costing yourself money. So that being said, we talked a little bit about some of the biggest challenges. What was the best piece of advice that you've been given about managing your money?
Put it in the right place to make it work for you. Stop looking at the money. Stop looking at it first and foremost. So when you invest, and my brother used to tell me this all the time, like, because I would invest. I remember my first investment, I had $10,000. It's like, okay, I don't want to know what you do with it. Just put it somewhere, just because I didn't know. I'm serious. That was because he was so much into the stock market, and he put it into this fund. He put it in this investment. It was a medical investment, and it bombed. But I just got to put that out there because there is a risk. But he was so sure about this. He said, this is great. And the reason that it bombed because there was a report that came out. I think it was around the election. Like I said, it wasn't that long ago. It was 2016 when I first started doing this. 2015, because Hillary Clinton said something in the press about this product, and it just collapsed or whatever. But that's a long story, so I'm still upset with her about that. But I remember giving him $10,000 of my money and saying, "Hey, man, put this." He said, "No, you can do this," and he set it all up or whatever. He said, "Here's the thing, though, Mike. You can't look at it. You can't look at it every day and worry, because it's going to go up, it's going to go down. It's going to have highs, it's going to low. But over a period of time, if it works out, it's going to work out for you. It really will work out for you in the end. And you just got to keep on, you got to monitor it. Don't get me wrong, but you can't look at the dips and feel like, oh, I got to panic, I got to get out. So that was, I think, the best piece of advice for me, is to be patient when it comes to any kind of investments that you make. Any kind of investments that you make in the financial world, yeah, you got to be patient. If you make an investment on a personal level with a person that you're in love with, your wife with, that's an investment in your future with her. Sometimes you got to be patient. You're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. But just because you have a bad day and that's your wife, you can't just leave her all of a sudden. You got to say, okay, is it worth it? Okay. Now, sometimes you got to sell that stock. Now, as a man that's been divorced a couple of times, you got to sell that stock after a while. If it starts to plummet, I understand that, and reinvest a little bit later, but be open to that. But once again, I think to answer your question, the best advice I had was to make the investment first and foremost. But secondly, be patient with the investments and make sure that your investments work for you.
Yeah, something that you just said is key, and it's important for everybody to understand. People are always trying to say, hey, is the market overvalued? Should I get it now, or did I miss the wave? There's never a time to time the market. You really should try and get invested, to your point, and then you have to just be patient. Be patient and understand returns aren't guaranteed. We understand that, and there is risk involved in that. But over time, if you stay patient, if you stay consistent, if you consistently have some contributions, that's when you start to see the ability of the compounding effect, and you can really start to grow your wealth, and not taking it out too early, but having a plan and bucketing your strategy versus your short-term needs and the funds that you need for rent, food, all the normal day-to-day activities, opposed to what is your investment budget. So that's where you can focus on your long-term needs, if it's retirement, if it's legacy planning and such. I think those are the things that we need to make sure the community is well aware of.
Absolutely. And you, like you said, setting aside a certain amount of money, that money that you usually will put in your little savings account, I'm gonna put this savings, that money you invest, you put that in there. And one of the things off the point of giving my brother the 10K from the beginning, now I've invested a little bit more money over a period of time on certain things, but I've learned not to put it all in one basket. You can't put all your eggs in one basket, man. If you have to, and I've heard this term before, diversify your funds. You got to just spread them out. That's where you come into play. And I just give you money like, okay, we're going to diversify and put it in this, we're going to put it in this gun, in this market, and this is going to be aggressive over here. So we might put a little bit more money in there or put a little less money in there, but we're going to see how that works. And this is a little bit safer over here. So you can diversify it and it all works out for you. And after over a period of time, you see it grow. I'll say it like this. Making an investment I think I was making $1,000 a week invest, just throwing $1,000 coming out of my paycheck, going right into my IRA, going right into certain different funds. Now you can only put so much money in IRA over a period of time, right? But I started putting it into investments and seeing that investment grow. That has been one of the most satisfying things that you see in your life. When you see, it's almost like a kid. You start with that seed and you start seeing it grow, and you look at your portfolio and you're like, all right, okay, all right. And then you hear about something on the news where it's like, I ain't even gonna look today. I don't even want to look, So, but once again, that comes into play, that patience comes into play, and just once again, diversifying it so that just in case Hillary Clinton makes some kind of statement about one stock, you don't lose all your money at once.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. And listen, that's where that education and seeking help, seeking the advice and thoughts of someone who lives that day to day, a financial advisor or people who are familiar with the market, it plays such a big role. That conversation, don't have to do that on your own when there are others out there that can absolutely help you. Now, I have to ask you something, because you had mentioned this earlier. You talked about personal relationships, and wives can be just like an investment as well, and you have to put just as much work into there. Now, we all know that you're married to Cynthia Bailey, who is one of the Real Housewives of Atlanta. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how did you all meet?
She's a former housewife. She just retired. So Thank goodness. Get rid of some of that drama, even though the drama still follows you even after the show's over, whatever. But this is my third marriage. Once again, investing once again, trying it again. But that hurts too. When you go through certain things in your life, when you go through divorces or whatever, that can hurt you when it comes to your money, obviously. But we met on the Steve Harvey show, believe it or not. Went on a dating segment. Steve knew her. I had known Steve for a while too, because D.L. Hughley's my cousin. And it was a dating segment that they had. And I was on the dating pool and she chose me. And that was 2.5 years ago. And we've been married for a year now. And it's just, that's my love. And it's funny you bring, I'm glad you brought it up, because it's good, because she has, her own means. I have my own means, obviously. But when you come together, that's another part of investing. As a matter of fact, her accountant was just over here yesterday. And I was talking to my accountant back in LA. And we were saying, we have to figure this out as far as like, okay, we need a financial planner for the two of us together. Individually is one thing, but the two of us, the things that we invest together, when we buy a house, we buy businesses, we buy land, we put money in, we need to do this together. So it's funny that you just brought her up, because we just had this conversation and we got to get on that sometime next week.
Yeah, it's probably a leading question, and there's no doubt about that, because we've talked a lot about how you learned and you rose and you started to get invested from the time when you had nothing. But when you're bringing two households together that have wealth, that are established, there's still opportunities to learn. There's still opportunities to make sure you're having those conversations with advisors, because things just become more complex or sophisticated in whatever your needs are. So for you, as a father and a stepfather, when did you actually start realizing that estate planning was going to be critical, and legacy planning, trust? What were your thoughts there, and how did you all come together to have those conversations?
You know what, and that's part of what we're doing, the two of us together, when it comes to estate planning, who gets what, because, right now, as it stands, my daughters would get anything that I have, and her daughter gets anything she has. And that's still, if it happens right now, that's fine. They'll be taken care of, because if something happened to her, I could still be able to survive on my own. It's not like, because we haven't started to investing anything together. It's not like we have this big mansion that's $4 million and then I'm relying on her income to do something and she's relying on mine. So right now it's not critical, but it's something that we're planning. And like you said, do it before it's too late. Don't do it while you're in the midst of it. So you got to plan ahead, and that's what we're doing. But I started realizing that I needed to start making these financial planning when it comes to your estate. When I started making a little bit more money, and I realized that, if something happens to me, I want my daughters to be taken care of. And that is part of generational wealth, being able to pass something down to somebody and not passing down debt. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of people, insurance policies and all that type of stuff, that creates debt. And you don't want to leave that for your family. You want to leave financial you want to leave wealth. You want to leave something that they can accumulate over a period of time. So, once I started getting my head in the game, or once with my investments, that's when I realized that, okay, well, it ain't just about my checking account that they can clear out to pay for my funeral, or this $50,000 policy I got that can barely put me in the ground. How much money can I spend? How much am I worth dead? Pretty much. How much am I worth dead? And how can it take care of my family for years to come? That's how you pass it down, including real estate. That's another thing I started doing. I was like, instead of spending $5,000, $6,000 for rent on an apartment, man, why am I doing this? I need to own this house, this land, pay this taxes, pay the taxes, put the money down. So if something happens, I can pass that along as well. And that's how you accumulate that, and that's how you pass down that generational wealth.
So one more thing, because you really are hitting on something that's so important in our community. I think it's important to help lift our people. And as we gain that knowledge, we need to make sure that we pass that forward. How do you think that we should go about doing more for our communities, particularly sharing these experiences? What are your thoughts there?
Well, be honest, first and foremost. People need to hear, I've dedicated my life to not living a fantasy or living a facade. I used to do that a lot. And that's one of the reasons I wrote books. I used to always put on this happy face and act like I lived this great life or whatever. But since I opened up, and since I decided that I wanted to be a little bit more transparent about my life, be honest about my life. I have a platform, right? So I'm in a high profile position, and not just being with my wife, but being on BNC and being on television, period. People look up to me, they see me, they say, okay, well, hey, Mike's got this, got that. Well, I want to let you know I made a lot of mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've done this, just in my personal life, but also in my financial life. So I can be honest about that and say, I'm just getting it. And I'm nowhere near at the level where I should be. I look back at all the money I made over the years. Now, Social Security, I should be great. But when it comes to, the money that I could have invested and saved, I should be in a position where I'm like, you know what, BNC, it's been good, but I think I'm ready to retire. I should be there. I'm nowhere near that. But I need to be honest with people who may look at me and say, well, he's married to Cynthia. Oh, look at the kind of car he drives. Look at the kind of house they live in right now. No, man. 5 years ago, you would not have wanted to be in my financial situation at all. So be honest with people so that they know that they're not alone. And yeah, nobody may have taught them, but nobody taught me. But right now, it's never too late to learn. So get with somebody. Once again, if you got 10 cents in your pocket or if you got 10 figures, get with somebody that you trust, that you respect, that you can swallow your pride and let them know exactly what you're dealing with and how you can make the money that you have work for you, for your future and your children.
That's fantastic, Mike. I want to personally thank you for this conversation. It truly has been enlightening, but more importantly, it's been inspiring. And your message and your vulnerability, and more importantly, I think your mission to make sure that people hear your story is something that we all should learn from. It's been a great conversation in regards to the tactics and advice that we need to help build that generational wealth. And it's folks like you who are sharing that story that give us hope. And more importantly, I think that inspiration, that change is definitely going to come. So appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you very much. And like I said, we're looking for financial advisors. I might be hitting you up, B.
We're ready.
All right.
Take care. Thanks.
All right, Barry. Thank you, brother.